Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Last 5 wrap-up video. This time we're going to be talking about the last 5 audiobooks that I have read that do not include rereads because there's a lot of Kate Daniels rereading going on via audio at the moment. That is unsurprising to anyone who is at all familiar with this channel. But we are going to kick off with Love Unleashed by Melanie Saward, which is a contemporary fiction story with romantic elements woven through the story. This one was narrated by Tamara Shelton, and we are following Bryn, who is an Indigenous woman. She is bisexual and she is chasing her dream. She wants to work in the literary field, and so she's chasing her dream in New York, except when she gets to New York she figures out pretty quickly that it's maybe not as easy as she thought it was going to be. She ends up working as a doggy daycare assistant person, and that's why there's so many dogs on the cover. And the book really explores her not only chasing this dream, but the relationships that she develops while she is over in the US. So she has the relationships with the person she's sharing an apartment with. She develops a close-knit group of friends while she's there. She explores lots of different relationships with both men and with women, and those relationships are not always successful or well communicated. And it is in part down to her exploring her sexual identity as well as she grows and works out, okay, what does she really want and who does she really want to be with. The interesting thing about this story, like the narration was great, the audiobook was a great way for me to listen to this book because I don't know if I would have finished it if I wasn't listening to it as an audiobook. And that's not because it wasn't well written or because the story wasn't good, because it is what it is. It's a contemporary fiction story, but it seems to have been marketed as a contemporary romance. Now, for me, if I'm looking at a contemporary romance, I want the romance and the relationship to at least to have your connection between the two characters who are going to have the romance to be the central focus of the book. It's not that. The central focus is Bryn's journey and development and growth as a character while she is overseas and on her own and having to figure out what she wants to do when her dream path doesn't just automatically open up for her. So it's not a bad book. I just think it's been mismarketed because while it does have romance through it, it's not a strict romance. And as someone who primarily reads romance, I know what I like in the romantic genre. I have to admit, I probably suspected that this is the path that it was going to take because a lot of Australian contemporary romances that get marketed as contemporary romances, I know what I'm in for. I know it's usually a contemporary story with a romance somewhere in the story. But I just wish that they would actually say that, because for me, the type of romance that I like, it doesn't have to be steamy or anything like that, but the couple has to be the central focus from start to finish, and that's not what you get in this book. So, great book, just go into it knowing what it is. And then I also read Miss Caroline Bingley, Private Detective by Kelly Gardiner and Sharmini Kumar. The audio narrator for this is Shaheen Khan, and this one follows Caroline Bingley from Pride and Prejudice fame as she and Darcy's younger sister investigate the disappearance of the brother of a serving girl, and they are of Southeast Asian descent. So this book does look at classism and racism in society at this time, the way that no one pays any attention to people who are of the serving class going missing, and really challenges Caroline to think about her place in society, her privilege, how other people don't have that. Like, she takes a lot of things for granted and is forced to confront some of those things in this book. And it was a really fun read. I think the audio narration was great. Again, I think this is a book where I may not have gotten through the whole thing if I was physically reading it, but the audiobook was great because I just put it on and I could pick up wherever I left off. I also read Am Nannertgarrook by Tasma Walton, and Tasma Walton was also the audio narrator for this, which I think was really important because this is Tasma Walton telling the story of her ancestors. So Tasma Walton is an Indigenous woman. She's descended from Nannertgarrook, who was a woman who lived a beautiful life in the Port Phillip Bay area. She was from sea country and she was raising a family in her community, was an integral part of her community when she was kidnapped and taken by white colonizers. She was taken away from her family along with a group of other women. She was pregnant at the time and she was essentially kept by a white man and used for sex and gave birth to his children, and she never was able to return home to her family. It is the story of her courage and resilience and her connection to her people and her country in the face of the stark realities of colonization and what happened to our First Nations people, particularly First Nations women. It unpicks that colonial history and challenges the idea of who were the savages and who were the civilized people in that situation, which I think, if it's not clear at all at this point in time, we all know white history has decided to paint itself in a much better light than it actually was. It was a very hard story to listen to at times. Again, I think having it on audio meant that I continued and persisted and got through the book because it was difficult at times because Nannertgarrook goes through so much at the hands of her captors, while still trying to create community around her because she is surrounded by First Nations women who have had the same thing done to them. They're raising children from partners who they did not choose and who have assaulted them. They are living through disease outbreaks and the death of children and the death of the people that they have come to call family. It is not an easy book. As I said, it deals with sexual assault, slavery, kidnapping. There is a lot of death. There are death of children. There are characters who choose to die over living the life that they have. And it is very, very hard hitting, but well worth reading. And I have a lot of respect for Tasma Walton, and always have for many, many years. And to see how far her stories have come, she writes both adult and children's fiction as well now. Like, it's fantastic. But the audiobook for this was really good. I think it was made even more powerful by Tasma narrating it herself. I also read Prince of Fortune by Lisa Tirreno, which is a complete change of pace because this is a YA queer fantasy story following Prince Edmund and Aubrey, who is a nobleman's son. This is narrated by Raphael Corkill and James Mernier, maybe? I might be mispronouncing that. YA fantasy. Prince Edmund is one of the heirs to the throne, and he has been prophesied to be a great ruler. He has a specific type of magic. Everyone in his family has magic, but he has a specific type of magic that helps things to heal and to grow. And so people like that are called Princes of Fortune. It is a very specific set of magical abilities. And he meets Aubrey, who is the son of one of his father's friends, and they become intrigued by one another. As they begin to know each other and they begin to fall for one another as partners, they are then faced with the challenge of, can this relationship be any more? Because really Prince Edmund should be marrying for political alliances, and Aubrey is not that. Aubrey also happens to be a seer, so he can see things that are about to happen, and their country is on the brink of war with a neighbouring country. And so throughout the course of this book, both of them are on the front lines of this war, and they are trying to maintain their relationship, trying to fight for their relationship, trying to deal with the political state of things. And yeah, it was a really interesting young adult book. It reminded me a lot, at least in tone, to Megan Whalen Turner series that I was reading earlier in the year. Not because of the plotline or the type of characters that you have, but just in the kind of feel of the fantasy world with the political machinations happening. So that was really interesting to read. Like months ago, I ended up at the book launch for Prince of Fortune because it was happening at the same time as another book and another author launching a book that I was there to see. So I got to hear a lot about how the book came about and the author's inspiration. So it was good to finally read the book. And then the last book I'm going to mention here is The Thinning by Inga Simpson. This one was narrated by Sophia Kartos, and this is a dystopian story set in Australia, particularly in and around Canberra and New South Wales. It is a dystopian future where bodily autonomy is tightly controlled and the world is seeing mass extinction, loss of biodiversity in a time of climate crisis. And we are following Finn, who we're getting the story of her past and her present. She grows up with her parents, one who is a very prominent astronomer and one who is a very prominent astrophotographer. And she grows up in and around all of that. She spends a lot of time at observatories. She's very well versed in astronomy and in the history of space. We get her story as she's growing up and as this world is changing, and as her mother particularly becomes very politically active, and the consequences of that and the impact of that on her and her father. Throughout the course of the book, her father, he has a terminal illness and he ends up dying, and she's left in the care of her mother, who is very much a political activist and very much on the radar of the authorities. As it turns out, as everything sort of goes to hell, they end up hiding out and camping with a group of like-minded individuals, and that's how Finn is raised. In the present day, a stranger turns up at camp, and their name is Terry, and Terry is an incomplete, a evolved form of human that has come about with all of these changes. And incompletes are not well thought of in society, and people do try to hunt them down. And as a total solar eclipse is about to happen, which is kind of going to be the catalyst for change in the world, Finn is separated from her group and is tasked with helping to make sure that Terry arrives in a particular location in time for this solar eclipse safely. And so that's part of the present day story, is them traveling from where they are to this location where they need to be. And Dianella, who is Finn's mother, her job is she's there to light a spark for the rest of the activist group, right? So it's a really, really interesting story, and it's very short. I think I would love to know a little bit more about the world, but for what it was quite compelling and very interesting. And as someone who just enjoys astronomy and space stuff in general, like, this was really interesting, set against a backdrop of a dystopian world. But yes, content warnings: death of a parent, terminal illness. There is a graphic unaliving scene for a character as well that's mentioned. Misogyny, sexism, SA, pregnancy. There's a little bit of body horror in here as well. But yeah, a very, very interesting book, and it's one I've seen around for a while. I think it won an award at one point, and I just had never picked it up, but the audiobook was available and I'm like, well, you know what, now's the perfect time because it's the Australian Readathon, so I did pick it up. And yeah, those are my last 5 audiobooks. In the comments, I'd love to know, have you read any of these books? Are you planning on picking any of them up? Feel free to let me know down below, or if you have any great audiobook recommendations, feel free to let me know. One of the really cool things about audiobooks, for me at least, is that I find them a much better way to consume genres that I don't generally reach for. I have my preferences for what I will physically read, but if it's something that I don't necessarily feel like I would get through reading with my eyeballs, audiobooks are excellent, and I find that I read so much more widely via audiobook, which is always fun. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a headphone emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.